there's no oversight. You technically have like oversight in Congress and the Senate, these Senate intelligence committees, these select committees that were created after the Church Commission found all these, what the Church Commission found just by itself, CIA developments of medications to try and make people lose control of their brains or inject people with diseases, like really sinister, dark stuff that the CIA was doing that nobody knew about, not even the president. They just did it on their own. It was a discovery of a secret government inside the government. So the idea was, well, we need at least some oversight. This oversight, they tell nothing to these committees. The people who get put on those committees are people who are the ones who most support these intelligence committees. It was run in the Senate for years by Dianne Feinstein. Her husband was a military contractor. She was embedded in these agencies. She defended everything that they did. The one time she questioned them, which was when she wanted to investigate the use of torture in the CIA, John Brennan, CIA, spied on Dianne Feinstein and on her entire staff. He got caught doing it. He lied and said he didn't. He finally admitted that it was done. He apologized and there were no repercussions. Like, let's let bygones be gone. Go Google John Brennan spying on Dianne Feinstein.
I'll never forget it. And when that story first broke, it was years ago. It was at least 10 years.
It was under the Obama. He was CIA director under Obama.
And I remember thinking, I don't think the CIA would ever dare spy on the select committee, on the Senate Oversight Committee of the CIA, of the intel community. I mean, I can't imagine they would have the balls to do something like that. That's insane. But I had no idea.
And they did it on somebody who was one of their blindest loyalists. The one time she stepped a little bit out of line because she wanted to investigate exactly what happened in the torture program.
So at that point, like, why do people put up with that? I mean, I guess Frank Church did die of incredibly fast-acting cancer. So maybe that's why. I mean, people must be afraid, because you'd think out of 535 with the Senate, there'd be somebody who's like, this is not democracy. This is totally immoral. Like, I'm going to just stand up and take them on. Like,
but Tucker, just let's say that, people had things on you that would, as you put it, destroy your reputation, make your kids think very poorly of you, would embarrass you for the rest of your life, would destroy whatever you value in life. It takes a very rare person to say, F it, I'm going to risk that happening. I think we have this self-preservation tactic. That's why those kind of things like blackmail, extortion are so effective, is because they can force people to
No, I think you're right.
Look at how much these like sexual misconduct allegations are used. When Julian Assange really got dangerous, suddenly out of nowhere appeared two women claiming that he quote unquote raped them, because the allegation was they had consensual sex with him, but he didn't use a condom when they had not given their consent to no condom, and that became rape under Swedish law. That's what forced him to the Ecuadorian embassy and led to everything that happened subsequently. Now with Matt Gaetz, the minute Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth too, like out of nowhere appears this alleged rape that nobody had heard about, that nobody knew about. It's always, the thing that always amazes me, this is actually the best example, in case anybody thinks, oh, our government doesn't do that. When Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I remember when I first heard about this, I was kind of confounded about why this happened. Obviously, they were saying the normal things you say about people like that, like, oh, he's a Soviet asset, he hates America, he put troops in harm's way, because he showed the public that the government was lying for years about the Vietnam War. Like inside, they were saying we can never win. Out externally, they were saying we're on the verge of winning. But what they also did, and it's the only reason Daniel Ellsberg ended up free, is they broke into his psychoanalyst office because they wanted to steal all the documents about his most intimate admissions to his psychoanalyst about his psychosexual life and fantasies, because that was the weapon of choice that they wanted to use to destroy him. That's a fact. The Nixon administration broke into the psychoanalyst office of Daniel Ellsberg when they couldn't find the documents. They planned to break in at the guy's house, and they finally put a stop to that. But they did break into a psychoanalyst office, and only because of that government misconduct did the judge dismiss the charges against Daniel Ellsberg, who otherwise was headed to prison for the rest of his life. Why would that be a response to a whistleblower revealing to the press that then revealed to the public that the government was systematically lying about the Vietnam War? It's because if you can have that information over somebody and then use it against them, you destroy. I remember when that happened with Julian Assange. no one wanted anything to do with Julian Assange anymore. No one wanted to mention his name. It's just like, ooh, this person's guilty of accused of rape. I just don't want anything to do with that. So if you could have shown that Daniel Ellsberg had this fantasy or had done this or had done that in the intimacy and privacy of his own life, everybody would have wanted to avoid it.
It's totally true. Did you ever find yourself on the wrong end of any of that since you were very high profile?
I mean, I think the important thing is that if you want to confront the government, if you want to spill secrets, if you want to bring unwanted transparency, which happens to be the job of a journalist. I know people forget that, but that is the job of a journalist.
Yeah.
If you go into journalism, that's what you're supposed to try to do. You have to, as best you can, guard against that. Like, you have to protect yourself, make sure that your own house is in order as much as possible, because that will be a huge vulnerability. But as I said before, everyone has things to hide. There's no one who doesn't.
100%. And it's also true that if, you get really attacked in a scary way, you don't want to talk about it. I mean, I feel that that has happened, not sex stuff, but I've definitely felt a lot of pressure, and you don't want to,
it's not just sex stuff. Yeah, there's
it's not just
all
sex
sorts
stuff.
of things in our past
Exactly.
that we do that we're embarrassed by.
But did you ever worry the intel agencies would try and hurt you?
Yeah, I mean,
dumb question.
Here's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people remember, but my husband, who's now deceased, but at the time, he went to Germany because there was a part of the archive that was corrupted, and we knew there was a lot of important documents there.
This.
And it was with Laura Poitras, and she, using her genius, had figured out how to access it. No one else could. But she didn't trust anybody, including the Guardian, to give it to bring to me. The only person she trusted was David. I couldn't travel outside Brazil because there was a concern that I would be arrested by the U.S. So I had to stay in Brazil. So only David could go and get those documents. And the way we talked about it was in a very secure, secret way, where we were using the highest levels of encryption at the time that Snowden insisted on. And when David went to Germany, he came back home through Heathrow. But at Heathrow, the British arrested him and detained him and threatened to prosecute him under an anti-terrorism law. And the only reason they let him out was because the Brazilian government, it became a huge story in Brazil. The Brazilian government was like, give us back our citizen immediately. And so they let him go. And then David sued the British government over human rights abuses because they were detaining him for journalism. And the British government said in their papers, when they defended their actions, we knew exactly what he was doing in Germany. We knew exactly what he was carrying. And that's the reason why we detained him, because we wanted to prevent these secret documents from getting out into the public because it harms British national security. Now, obviously, we got the archive anyway, and we reported on those documents, but they admitted they knew and were listening to our conversations about why he was going there. They knew when he was going there. Everything was being tracked. And so when Did
you ever figure out how?
I knew they were using, part of the reporting that we did was that the NSA had cracked even the most sophisticated levels of encryption. So things that people thought were safe, there's nothing 100% foolproof. And at the time, we were among the most watched people in the world because we had in our hands the most sensitive secrets from the world's most powerful government that we were going around the world publishing to inform people of journalistically. And so, of course, we knew we were being spied on by probably a lot of people. It's just the British were forced to admit it. And when you get that confirmation as opposed to like a belief or suspicion, the level of invasiveness you feel is hard to express because they're not just listening to the parts of your conversations where you're talking about the Snowden documents.
I know. I know firsthand. Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, I mean, you had private conversations leaked as well when you were trying to interview President Putin, but a lot of other things.
And had massive problems with Ukrainian intel service, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not about me. I don't hold any institutional power. It's just interesting if you see what happens in your own life just by talking about it. I haven't done anything ever. Just sit around the studio, talk to people. But, you see the pressure they apply to you. Like, what would it be like to be, the chairman of the Intel Committee or the Speaker of the House or the President of the United States?
Exactly.
I mean, I can't even imagine. And it just shows you what a remarkable person Trump is. He is he's weirdly resistant to that stuff. And that's why they hate him.
I mean, remember all the stuff that came out in 2016 when they thought he might win, like the Access Hollywood tape that came out of nowhere. And the Stormy Daniels stuff, they threw everything out there. And Trump is is a very rare person who's just kind of shameless. Like, he doesn't feel a sense of shame, and he doesn't back down no matter what. He gets more aggressive against people who try to force him to. It's just his instinct. It's who he is. I watched him for many decades when I was a lawyer in New York, when he was a, big real estate mogul, constantly being sued in lawsuits. Everybody knew how he was. And that's what is so threatening about him. It's not his ideology or his beliefs or the fact that they think he's in Russia. It's the fact that he's immune,
racism,
right, or that he's a racist, right. No one cares about that. No one believes that. It's the fact that he's immune to the type of control that for decades they've been able to impose on people who wield any power, let alone the power of the presidency.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.